Okay, the live stream is starting to connect. Okay, we are live on YouTube. So Richard, if you want to go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you, Amy. My name is Richard Bowden. I'm Executive Director of the Summer Science Program. And it's my pleasure to present to you first at the 2021 College Roundtable. This is our one time during the Summer Science Program when we take a few hours to talk formally and specifically about college admissions. It tends to be a subject of interest to high school juniors and seniors and their parents. And we have good advice for you, we think. Just to remind you, in case you don't know, we have formal relationships with 7 different colleges and universities. We have 4 host campuses in a normal summer where they're in person. This summer and last summer, we still maintain that partnership. We just don't get to go there in person. But these are our working partners. We also have academic partnerships, admissions partnerships with Caltech, Harvey Mudd, and MIT. And all 7 of these are great schools. As an SSPer, you'll find that you can get their attention of the admissions department. If you contact them and ask them questions, they will respond to you. And we have representatives of 2 of them here today, Harvey Mudd and MIT. But I suggest that you consider any of them and all of them, as they're all good schools. So I want to start with some good news. Turns out that I know from having children had gone through this process that by the time you're a junior in high school, you're already kind of sick and tired of hearing about college admissions, about applying to college. You wish you could just skip that whole business and go straight to college. That would be good, but they don't let you do that. You came to SSP this summer, which is the next best thing. I don't know how many of you are confident versus anxious about how this is going to go for you. In the last session with the biochemistry folks, I was surprised at how many were confident. I hope that's you too. But I know that some of you at least are a little bit anxious about this process and how it's going to turn out for you. I know you get a lot of advice, tons of it, too much probably. You get advice and emails from colleges and classmates and counselors and parents and teachers and grandparents and websites and books. And, they're all telling you what you have to do. You have to do this. You have to do that. Don't forget the blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to bring you some hopefully anxiety reducing information and advice. You will get into a good college. Yes, you will. And once you do, you will get a great undergraduate education and then go on to the next step in your life path. So you don't need to be anxious. You don't need to be intimidated. You can be confident because you'll be fine. Really, you may not know it, but you're already almost the perfect college applicant. Good colleges admit students like you. In fact, you're going to get admitted to more than one college, but you're only going to be able to go to one. So that means that some of these colleges are going to admit you only to have you reject them. And in fact, you really should redirect your emotional energy into feeling pity for them. You will make them sad. They deserve your pity. You should feel sorry for them. So that is one of our takeaways today. There is, however, I said you're almost the perfect applicant. There is one more piece to the puzzle, and where you should actually focus your attention this coming fall. You want to worry? Okay, just worry about the right things. Worry about what you want out of a college and why. What are your goals for your own undergraduate education? And which colleges are the best fits to those goals? So These questions, what you should worry about is first yourself. These questions are about you first and about them second. And we can think about, you'll hear this other places, it's true. You'll think about different kinds of fit. Academic fit. Do they teach what you want to study? And that's kind of maybe the most obvious kind of fit. It's fairly easy to find. Cultural fit is more subtle, and that is the sort of thing that you can get a sense of by reading about the college, by talking to people who are going there, and by visiting if possible. Hopefully, that'll be possible this fall. And finally, financial fit, which is not a trivial thing, and it should not be an afterthought. Basically, college is expensive, and there's a huge disparity, difference between contrast between the costs of different colleges, and you might spend this much, or you might spend 5 times this much for a similar experience in undergraduate education. And to graduate debt free is a reasonable goal, or with less debt than others. Lots of people these days graduate with 6-figure debts that burden them for years, especially grad students, by the way. And often they feel after college that they have to take a higher paying job they like less because they have this debt versus a lower paying job they like more. So, and you can't get out of college debt, by the way, by filing bankruptcy. In case you're thinking that's how people get out of debt, that's true, but not for college debt, not for education debt, because the lender can't repossess your education. So you're kind of stuck with it unless you die. So I don't recommend that. Anyway, going back to my conclusion, you will get into a good college where you will get a great undergraduate education and you'll be fine. So, enough said. Everybody's convinced, right? Right? Everyone's happy, confident. Well, I've done this before, and I know that that's probably not going to convince everyone. The argument from authority, I should know, I'm telling you, you should believe me. Maybe not. Let's try our argument by anecdote, okay? So every spring I get emails like this from alumni from the previous summer. I remember when you told all of us that we would be going to get into a good college, and I thought it applied to everyone in the room except me. Now I'm going to a school I never imagined attending, so you were right in the end. Well, and actually the follow-up to this was about she gotten into Columbia. Then she emailed me the next month saying she changed her mind and picked Stanford. Now, how do you think that made the people at Columbia feel when she told them that? It made them feel sad. That's how. So now we have the argument by anecdote and the argument by authority, and now everyone is happy, right? No worries. That's enough. Or maybe you're scientists. Maybe you need data. Okay. I have evidence. I have 3 kinds of evidence. Number 1, you applied to SSP. You chose to apply to SSP. You decided to. And then you got in, and then you decided to come. So that's big. That shows colleges that you are motivated enough and talented enough to make it through our admissions process, which is very similar to that of a selective college. Our admissions rate is 10%, which is pretty low. And we admitted you means that your talent and motivation, not only do you have them, but then they came through on your application, because we didn't know you, right? We just had what you gave us. So that's important, and colleges know that. So here's a graph of the number of applications to SSP since 2000. The highest bar, which is in the light purple, is the number of people who registered. So this past year, it's almost 4,000 on our online form. Then the green bar is how many filled out that long online application that you will remember, and that is about 27 something. 2,700 people. And then the next one down is the ones who completed their whole application with essays, recommendations, transcripts, so forth. That is, this past year was almost 1,800. And then down at the very bottom, this little blue line is how many are actually enrolled, 180. So you are in that. You are that select group. And that's pretty awesome. So number one piece of evidence, you're here. Number two, doing this program makes you a better college applicant. How is that? In several ways. The life skills you learn, self-discipline, when to ask your peers for help, when to ask your faculty for help, how to overcome um, imposter syndrome and admit you don't understand, and take the risk of appearing stupid because you have to ask for help. You have to learn how to do that, how to overcome all kinds of academic challenges. Makes you a good bet to succeed in college because that's going to happen to you in college too. Even if high school was easy for you. And college admissions people know this. And this experience helps you understand yourself better, your own strengths and weaknesses, your own education and career goals. And when you apply to college, you can articulate to them why you want to go there, what you want to do there, and that alone will make your application stand out versus your average high school student who's like doesn't know. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I'll major in this. So this experience helps you introspect and make you a better applicant. Plus, there is a mentoring program that we offer after SSP, after the summer portion, called Ssp Connect, where you have the opportunity to have a assigned mentor who's an undergrad or anyway an alum of SSP who's a few years out of SSP to talk to about college admissions all through the fall. You'll get instructions on how to apply for that later, but it's something that you can do if you want to. When I say apply, it means it's not automatic. You have to ask. And then we have a worldwide network of alumni of all ages who went to all kinds of different schools and then did all kinds of different careers. And you can contact them and ask them questions, and they'll be almost universally happy to help. So the third piece of data I have is the track record. SSP alumni get into pretty good colleges. And that is a true fact. I have a list. I have a list of what happened to the 2020 alumni who went to SSP online last summer, and I will show that to you now. We asked them where they were admitted to and where they decided to enroll. And so that's what this list is. It's sorted by where they decided to enroll. Some of them were admitted to a whole big long list, some admitted to only one place. And it's okay because after all, you're only going to get to go to one at a time. So there's a case to be made for narrowing your application list to the ones you really want to go to. Some do and some don't. So anyway, these are good schools. And I think if you look at this list, it scrolls by, you find that you'll agree with me. They're pretty good schools. My alma mater, Cornell, went by. Some people went to Harvard. By the way, you can see all the schools that these alumni rejected and said, no, thank you. I know you told me I could come, but I'm not going to come to your place. I'm going somewhere else. And that's a lot more, right? So some went to Harvard, Johns Hopkins. We had a few go to MIT, and we had a few more, and we had a few more, and we had a few more. So SSP alumni get into good schools. Okay. No, really. So in summary, what you need to do is retrospect, relax, do understand that SSP is not a magic ticket to any college, and your application will be probably denied by some. And notice I said your application will be denied, not you. Admissions people don't know you, and they can't. They're in no position to judge you as a human being. They only see your application and they see thousands of others. So please try not to take it personally if you're turned down because it's very subjective and at some level it's random. But you will be accepted by a good college and you can only go to one anyway. So introspect until you can describe what you want your college to be like and why, then apply to several that are like that. And you will get into a good college where you'll get a great undergraduate education and you will love it and you'll make friends and you'll think it's the best college in the world. So finally, a little reading assignment. I have a reading assignment for you. Where you go is not who you'll be, an antidote to the college admissions mania. I have two reading assignments for your parents who might be watching. Crazy You, One Dad's Crash Course in Getting His Kid into College. Very entertaining, but nevertheless good information in that book. And Letting Go, A Parent's Guide to Understanding the College Years. So with that, it's time for our panel, and we'll start with our admissions professionals here with us today. Amy?
Thank you, Richard. Yes, we have two admissions officers here today. We have Peter Osgood from Harvey Mudd College and Chris Peterson from MIT, and they each have a few minutes to talk to you. And then we'll hear from our TAs, and then in the second hour, we'll open it up for questions. So Peter, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you. I hope you can all see what I have projected here, a picture of our campus and my contact information if you'd like to contact me directly. It was interesting, the list of colleges that students applied to and were accepted to attend and chose to enroll that Richard projected. There were very few undergraduate only institutions. And I work at one of these places, and I'd like to encourage you to consider this as an option for you. I'll get into that in just a bit, but first I'll tell you a little bit about our college. We're in Southern California, which is an attractive area. It's diverse. There's all kinds of things happening. There's good weather. You can be outdoors pretty much all year. We're framed on our campus by these mountains that are about 3,000 meters high. We're about 50 kilometers from downtown Los Angeles. We're approximate to an ocean, to a desert, all these great things to have as resources. We're only about 15 kilometers from a very good airport that you could get to, Claremont. One of the things that's distinctive about Claremont, this is the picture of the valley that we inhabit, that we're part of a consortium of colleges roughly modeled after the Oxford and Cambridge systems in England. All these hacienda tile roofs are other colleges. This is a map. There are a crude map, 7 colleges in this group. 2 of them are exclusively graduate schools, although their students aren't allowed to teach our undergraduates, and 5 colleges literally across the street from each other. Well, actually, what separates Harvey Mudd from Pitzer is a large rock and a bush. It's not really a street, but you can get around to these other colleges. You can take courses at the other colleges, make friends at the other colleges, activities. So it's really about 6,000 undergraduates, although Harvey Mudd College, as does each of the member institutions, has a distinctive personality. Our personality is that we're the STEM-focused institution in the group, and we're one of a very small number of really high-powered STEM institutions that serves undergraduates exclusively. And I think that's a huge benefit because all of the resources of our institution, all of the research opportunities, all of the attention of our faculty, all of our resources for students to engage civically and in extracurricular activities, all are focused on undergraduates. There are 2 main takeaways from this, my session. I hope that this mission will be one of them. This is our very much our directive. It guides all major decisions at the institution. Our academic program is married to this. We care deeply about students having a broad math and science education before they can tunnel into a major. Interesting point, you are not allowed to select a major in your first year. We don't select students based on major. We also insist that students take what turns out to be about 25–30% of their total course count in the humanities, social sciences, and arts. We work best for students who actively want that. And then a lot of students connect, well, we connect with this idea of having an impact because let's be honest, science can be great and benefit society, but it can also be twisted in some devious ways. We're small. We have 900 students total. Some of you go to high schools where perhaps your senior class is larger than an entire institution. I will try to tell you and try to hopefully convince you that being at a place intimate where people will know you, the faculty will look out for you, fellow students look out for you, is a real benefit to you. It's a diverse student body. It's a freshman class is exactly 50-50 male and female. Incoming first year class is about 20% Latinx, about 8% international, a little over 10% who identify as African American. As I mentioned before, small student to faculty ratio. Our academic program follows along with our mission. There's a common core curriculum. You'll find that this is a similar structure to what MIT has. We do it a little bit different ways. I'll skip through the details of this. This is courses that you must take in humanities and social science and arts, a lot to choose from at Harvey Mudd College and through our neighbor institutions through cross-registration, which you would do if you came to Mudd. You have to, but you would choose to. And then our majors, we have broad-based majors in keeping with our mission. So you'll see one major in physics, one major in engineering, one major in biology. We have some combination majors, but it's a short list. Again, you typically don't select a major till well in your way. This approach, this broad-based major approach, puts a lot of pressure on us to offer a lot of high-end courses. If you're interested in math, almost certainly you would be as an astrophysics student. We offer you collectively in Claremont 140 math courses in a year, which is a pretty large number for a very small student body. And we require students to do research as a capstone experience. And there are many, many opportunities to engage it early in your career if you have the gumption to do that. You will be pretty well bombarded with opportunity to do so. I will point out this program that is, I think, unique in higher education, and I mean that quite literally is unique, where students work on R&D problems sponsored by outside agencies, government agencies, national labs and the like. Could be companies, could be nonprofit organizations. Some are social justice oriented. And then if you're interested in more theoretical areas, the string theorists of the world would do a senior thesis, or the biologist or chemist, for example. We do a great job of preparing students for their next steps. We're well noted for this. The best part, this is not the best reason to come to the college, it's for the culture of the student body. Intimate, we're governed by a student-led honor code. We're residential. If you would have interest in Greek life, you'll have to be content with math and physics, because that's where you'll see your deltas and epsilons, sigmas, lambdas, and deltas. We have 9 residence halls. Upper class students actively look out for their new arrivals and mentor them. There are several structures in place to support you with this. Traffic can only go east or west on our campus. We're governed by an honor code, which emboldens our faculty to give students take-home exams. There's an atmosphere of trust on our campus. An unwritten rule in the dining hall is that every table can accommodate N+1. So it's a very inclusive and welcoming place. And then we're not alone. We've got these neighbors right across the street. A lot of support programs for students, a lot of opportunity to engage. In admission, I'd like to point out that we have been test optional this past year. This is evidence that not submitting a test SAT or ACT does not harm your application in any way, nor does it advantage your application in any way if you do submit it. I think we are very much looking for, as Richard mentioned, fit. And that has to do with our college's mission, our academic structure, our culture. I will say that we pay a lot of attention to your attitudes and values as they're communicated through your application or perhaps through an interview, which you could take advantage of. We are need blind for any US citizen or US permanent resident. We are not so for international students. And so if an international student does need funding, the bar is quite high for that. But in all of the respects, we always meet 100% of students' demonstrated need. Our default rate on student loans is 0. We package with a minimum amount, and we offer merit scholarships in addition to need-based aid. Most of these you may not apply for. We align them to you, and there are only 3 that you could apply for. So the last thing I want to say is that we have found great commonality and experience between the students who've done SSP, partly because of the intellectual stimulation, the working hard on a long, hard problem, the kind of growth you experience, the kind of perspective you get. And I think you'll find a similar cohort when you get to MUD. Last thing I'll say, since this is an astrophysics program that you've been a part of, you might look at the level of success we've had, particularly in physics, and astrophysics would be a component of our physics major. There's a prize given to the top thesis writer in the United States called the Apker Prize. And we have shown really well on that. So this really small, intimate, connected community has a real big impact, particularly in the world of physics. So with that, I'm going to stop my share, and you get to hear from Chris Peterson, who's really a delight to listen to.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. My name is Chris Peterson. I'm an admissions officer at MIT. This is my nth annual time speaking to SSP from the last 10 years or so that I've been doing it. Peter and I were talking earlier. We both love astronomy and astrophysics. He was just discussing. He's a Libra. I'm a Scorpio. So we're all very excited to be here today with you. So I don't have a slideshow for you. If you would like to look at our slideshow, you can go to mitadmissions.org and sign up for one of our virtual information sessions. But what I would like to do is give you a couple of MIT specific facts and descriptors, and then also give you a few things to think about that we'll probably also talk about in the Q&A period, but just kind of table stakes for the conversation. So MIT, Cambridge, Massachusetts, East Coast. You know, we were founded in the 1860s by a group of people who got together and thought that education in the United States was fundamentally broken. That there was basically a path to education if you were a rich white dude who wanted to read Latin or forcibly convert Native Americans to Christianity, or you could apprentice to a master of a skilled trade and become a carpenter or a mason or a miller or any of those useful arts, but not necessarily ever be literate. And the folks who started MIT thought there should be a place where you could combine mind and hand, mens et manus, theory and practice, learning and doing. And they secured a land grant from the state of Massachusetts in order to found a private university in the public interest. One that was devoted to helping the nation and the world solve those kinds of difficult problems. Administratively, MIT is organized into a school of engineering, a school of science and math, a school of the humanities, arts, and social sciences, school of architecture and planning, and a school of management science, as well as a college of computing. But when you apply to MIT, you apply to all of MIT. And if you're admitted to MIT, you're admitted simultaneously to all of MIT. There are many areas where we have continuities with Harvey Mudd and are also areas of distinction. I think one of the reasons why both of our institutions have such a long history with SSP is because of those cultural continuities, the love of an intense, challenging, rewarding, problem-solving oriented education, the fact that sometimes you just get nerd sniped by problems on the chalkboard, and they can't get out of your head, and you just are drawn in towards that kind of learning. You know, in the earlier session, Peter talked about how Harvey Mudd, and let me tell me if I've got this committed to memory correctly, was founded by a physicist who walked away from the Manhattan Project. I'll drop a link in the chat, but you know, MIT's education was redesigned in the late 1940s by one of the leading scientists who had been on the Manhattan Project and walked away from it after its completion, thinking, man, what are we going to do about science education so that we don't destroy the world? One of the things that was in that Lewis report is the idea of creating an education where students can pursue their own unique interests and aptitudes wherever it takes them, in the service of kind of a broader social goal. What I want to say that I think is more general beyond MIT, you can go to our website, you can come to one of our information sessions. We'll hopefully be reopening to actual visitors on campus on September 7th, knock on wood, in terms of the pandemic. But what I would tell you about thinking about looking at colleges is that when you're establishing your lists, when you're making spreadsheets, when you're trying to figure out where you might want to apply, I would really encourage you to look at aspects of the way that the school constructs its education that are going to gravitationally pull people in the direction of developing certain academic and personal trajectories. To make that more concrete. So, there are some schools like both of ours where we don't let you declare a major until the end of your first year. And we don't take into account your area of interest on your application in terms of giving you a significant admissions boost. There are other schools where you apply to a particular program or major, college or school, and it's actually kind of tough to change it once you get there. There are some schools that have really early drop dates. So you sign up for a class and within September, this was true at my undergrad alma mater, which was a large state university, you had to decide if you were going to stay in that class within just a couple of weeks, like you barely looked at the syllabus or done any readings. At MIT, you don't have to drop a class until 10 weeks into a 14-week semester, meaning you can basically be at Thanksgiving before you have to commit to staying in that class. At some schools, there are cultures of intra-student competition for being the valedictorian, getting magna or summa cum laude, being invited into certain prestigious, secret societies or something. Making it into some kind of departmental special program, getting a scholarship. At MIT, we don't keep track of class rank or who has the highest GPA or give anybody special honors or anything else that might contribute to that sense of intra-student competition. And the reason I say all of these things is it's really hard, I think, particularly during the pandemic, to get a sense of what schools are like, because visits are restricted, and even in pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic times, you go to a place at a particular time of year, you see what kind of trees they have, you notice what the school colors are, and that's all. It matters, but it's a little bit more superficial. In my view, from doing this for a long time, and as someone who royally screwed up their own college search, so I know what not to do. Looking at the specific boring administrivia policies and procedures of a school, what they require, what they offer, how they constrain, and how they give you freedom is actually really informative for trying to understand how you might develop at those institutions. How you what path your development might take, because all of so much of that culture is generated by those constraints and opportunities that are written in small print in some course catalog or something somewhere. And as research oriented students, this is something you can actually do that's productive with some of your extra capacity or sense of anxiety. To whatever degree it was not fully eliminated by Richard's data-driven presentation. I would encourage you to use some extra research capacity. Just say, like, what do I really care about? How do I think these specific constraints and opportunities are going to affect me? And how is that going to pull me on? And that is way more important than, like I said, the school colors, then the mascot, then the ranking, because all college rankings are elaborate scams made up to sell copies of ranking books, and none of them really mean anything. about your individual education and how it's going to be for you. And so I really just want to encourage you all to attend to those things, and also to think about what's going to be the best thing for you, the human, to develop in. One of the dean of admissions at MIT, who's been an incredible mentor for me, has a thing that he likes to say where he says, you should be careful about where you go to work, because the values of the place where you work will slowly become your values as you're pulled in that direction. And indeed, the word for institute comes from the Latin, not from a building, but from the custom, from the word for custom or way of habit. And more fundamentally than they are brick or mortar, glass or steel, educational institutions are groups of people who agree on a particular culture over a particular period of time. So pay attention to that, because that's going to really matter. Okay, that's enough. I look forward to answering any of your questions.
All right, thank you. Before we get to questions, we're going to hear from 4 of our SSP TAs, and they'll tell you a little bit about their experience navigating the college admissions process and their decision making. So we're going to start with, we'll start with Jean-Pei, and then we'll go to Alan, Tristan, and Michael, and you can all just go in order. So let's go ahead and hear from the TAs.
Sorry. Hello. Sorry, my timer just went off. I'm Jean-Pei. I'm one of the ONL TAs. So like a third of you, I guess, know me. I volunteered to go first. Let me think of what I had prepared to say. So I was an SSP participant at Westmont in 2014. Before that, like, you know, applying to the colleges I did end up applying to, like, felt somewhat more distant of a dream, let's say. But certainly SSP gave me the confidence to say, oh, I actually like can apply to like X and Y school and so on. So in my college admissions process, I applied to Yale early, got in, and then like for whatever reason decided to apply to 4 more schools, because I guess I was like, oh, I should give myself more options than just like going to Yale, way back in like December of 2014 or whatever. So I ended up getting into Princeton and UChicago and Stanford as well. As you might know, I ended up going to Stanford. And that's where I graduated last year with 3 degrees. So I got a bachelor's in physics, a bachelor's in studio art, and a master's degree in applied physics. Let's see, what else do I have to say about college admissions? So I only ended up applying to 5 schools. I had a plan to apply to many more, I think probably like 13 or so, but because I had gotten so lucky in the like early process, it wasn't necessary for me. So I guess I really lucked out in that regard. Yeah, so what was I gonna say? As far as my own admissions process goes, I think probably the most important parts of my application were, 1, having gone to SSP, which is like a huge boost, and like knowing and like being friends with the kinds of people through SSP who were also applying to similar schools. You know, like I talked about it a lot with my SSP friends. I'm sure you already have as well. Like I had my roommate, like read my essays, and I helped edit her essays as well. And like I was editing, like I was helping edit like my other friend's essays in Overleaf, an SSP friend who also ended up going to Stanford with me. So I think the essays are important as well. I guess that's the other thing. That being said though, I would encourage you to, you know, like chill out about it. You'll be fine, I promise. I was so nervous, you know, like it really felt like it was gonna make or break my life. But in retrospect, you know, like 5 years on, having spent like 5 years at Stanford, and knowing people who went to other like similar tier schools, like I honestly think I would have been like gotten just as good of an education and like been just as like had as meaningful and rich of an experience if I had gone to like a liberal arts school, for example, or a state university. This is always like, I think this is something I started feeling early on, and then it has been supported by my like lived experience and evidence. What else am I going to say? I am, of course, happy to field any questions about Stanford. Yeah. Let's see, what else? Honestly, like, I thought that the choosing schools process, like in the spring of my senior year, when I was like trying to decide whether I was going to go to, like Chicago or Princeton or Stanford or Yale, was by far the more nerve-wracking part, because it is like the next 4 years of your life, like how do you want to live? And I think that, and like those schools are basically like on par with each other as far as physics goes, and that's what I was looking at mostly, at physics, like the strength in their like academics in research and physics. But I would have done just fine at any of those as far as academics go. I like was really, I guess, focused on like how I wanted to live, and so in like where I wanted to live, like the kinds of people I wanted to meet, things that are as nebulous as the word vibes, let's say. But I like ultimately think I made the right choice. I really like value my Stanford experience. There are like pleasant things or unpleasant things. I certainly like did a lot of things. I grew as a person a lot. I guess one good thing about an expensive private elite university is that they have a lot of money, and so like I get studied abroad twice with like full financial aid. I also got a full scholarship to like almost everywhere, except for Princeton I applied to. So I got a lot of like financial aid to study abroad, which is like part of why I think I mentioned to the ONL like participants, like I ended up going to like 26 countries or whatever in undergrad. But yeah, that's about it for me. Feel free to ask me any questions about my experience. Yeah, I'll pass it on.
I suppose I'm next. So hi guys, I'm Alan. Again, a third of you know me. I'm one of the other ONL TAs. And so I guess I was going to segue off of ZP's points. So I did the biochem program in 2018, and it definitely like opened up my eyes to like what kind of colleges I could be applying to, because like my high school wasn't like too into STEM. Like I had never heard of Science Olympiad before going to SSP. Like people were talking about like, what is this like cool program you guys are all doing? Like what? And so like after SSP, I was like, wow, there's so many like cool colleges. Like I could apply to like MIT. Like whoa, this is cool. And so it kind of broadened my horizons of like, wow, there's like schools I could get into that are like higher than I was like thinking of beforehand. And it kind of got my hopes up with stuff. And so I applied to I think I took it pretty safe. I applied to like a good spread of schools, based on like admission rates and stuff like that of where it was like a reach school, or where it was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can get into this school, and then like in between. And so I didn't manage to get into MIT or Harvard, so I was pretty bummed about that for a while. And I was like, oh no, my life is ruined. It's horrible. And it really wasn't. And I ended up at University of Michigan, and it's pretty good. I like it here, and it kind of like it hit me like after a year, kind of what ZP mentioned, about the like you can get a good education at like most colleges, most universities, and then a lot of it will just depend on what kind of area you want to live in. Do you want a big school, with tens of thousands of students, like University of Michigan, or do you want like a smaller school like Harvey Mudd or MIT that have less students, way less students than like a massive public university? and then also depends, right? Because like I guess personally, like UMich has like a lot of research going on, so that was partially what attracted me there. I mean, they tout the #1 public research university in the States or something, or in the world. So it was pretty attractive. And after doing biochem program, I actually wanted to do like biochem. I applied to like the literature, science, and art college here. Because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do biochem, right? And then like once by the time I actually got in, or like was getting like acceptances back from mainly University of Michigan and University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, I was like, I kind of like material science now. And so, because I had gotten into a material science program at University of Illinois, and then I spent about a month after like a month just choosing whether I should go to Illinois or Michigan, and it took me like way too long to kind of decide that, but I ended up going with Michigan. And then I didn't even do material science. I took one class, but by then I had already become involved with a really great student organization here, Michigan Mars Rover, and now I'm doing computer engineering, and I think that's what I'll stick with. So I went through like a lot of kind of changes of what I wanted to do, and it ended up being fine. I could do all those things, and not like be in the wrong place doing the wrong thing. So I ended up, I think, in a pretty good place in terms of what I'm doing and the school, and I'm it's pretty fun. I guess I'll talk a little bit about admissions process. So I've had a couple questions about like the essays and stuff, at least from the ONL campus, and they are important. I don't think there's something that like, I mean, it's your best way of showing your personality and like who you are on paper, right? That's probably the best way, unless you did like maybe a video interview or something. But the essays are important, and they show like who you are and what you're doing. And so writing those to a sufficient degree is pretty important, and make sure that you and your personality and the stuff you like doing, all that should come across. Yeah, I think that's it for me. It's my spiel.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alan. That was a great talk on University of Michigan. Hello, all. I am the next presenter. My name is Tristan. About probably, well, a little bit more than a third of you know me because I'm the one of the observing TAs. So some of you might have gotten letters from me saying, hey, check this, or hey, good job, you did the thing. But anyway, I went to a program, the Yale summer program for astrophysics, and then I ended up at Yale, which is behind me, very real. And so I'll talk a little bit about my what Yale is like, but before that, my journey to get there. So I went to the Yale summer program for astrophysics. And that's actually where I decided, okay, Yale's fine. I can apply to Yale. That's great. But Yale wasn't my top choice, nor was it my second choice, nor was it even my third choice. I was thinking, okay, sure, I'll apply to Yale. Why not? I did not get into my first choice or second choice or third choice, and I got into Yale, and it's been great. So just a little spiel on that. It will be fine wherever you go. It's going to be great. You will go somewhere awesome. It will be good. And it was not the end of the world when I did not get into my first, second, or third choice. Nothing bad happened. The world did not explode. I thought it would. It didn't. The world kept on turning. So that's a little bit spiel on that. Another spiel that I will give is it was not an easy choice for me at the end I was choosing between Yale and UC Santa Barbara. applied to UC Santa Barbara. I thought, okay, great, this will be my safety school of safety schools, whatever. And then I looked a little bit more into it, and I thought, and I said, wow, there is a really good physics program here. I could see myself going here. It is a beautiful campus. There is a program specifically for people who want to do research in physics. So I didn't end up going there, but I guess that what I'm trying to get at is, don't overlook programs because they don't have the super name recognition. I think UC Santa Barbara is the school that I was looking at, and I almost went there. Don't just say, hey, this is the biggest name, I'm going to go here because it is the biggest name. Because like it's been said so many times, what college is going to give you is the life experience, the knowledge to go forward. If you go somewhere with name recognition because it has name recognition, well, great, you get to put that on your resume. Is that all that you want? You should have more than that. Some things about Yale, I think I've burnt through most of my time, so I'll go quickly. Yale is known for being a liberal arts school. You can try anything, and people do. I've taken classes in philosophy, linguistics. I took a class on the essentially the ethics of infinity, and that was really cool. I quite enjoyed that class. But also I knew that I wanted to do physics. I knew that I wanted to do math, and it is a liberal arts school, but I have been able to take really intense, hard physics math classes. I've been able to go forth and do that. And for the last 4 semesters, I'm just taking physics and math and physics and math and physics and math. So that's something that one can do at a liberal arts school. Just because it says liberal arts, that doesn't mean you're going to have to take half of your classes as humanities, which is what I mentioned because I was scared of. Another great thing about Yale is there are just a lot of really great research opportunities. Wherever you go, a professor will be happy. Wherever you turn, a professor will be really, really happy to take you in and to do whatever research you want. I have had the great opportunity to work with one of the leading experts in the world on active galactic nuclei for 2 years now, and I thought there was going to be this big interview process, and I came in, I was wearing my suit, I was wearing my tie, and I had my resume, and I just came in, and she said, oh yeah, this seems like an interesting project. Yeah, I think you should do this project. I'll welcome aboard for the summer. And I was, wow, that was great. That was awesome. Another thing, a lot of, although name recognition isn't anything, a lot of the, like Yale, for example, full financial aid for anyone who needs it. I know a lot of the other schools do something important to look at. I think I'll end there given the time, but yeah, you'll be fine. Don't panic. Things will be good. You are awesome. You will continue to be awesome. Yes. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Tristan, for that really uplifting ending there. I'm Michael. I don't do anything that those on other campuses would recognize me, so only my NMT folks know me. I had a little bit of a different experience from the other 3 TAs on the panel. I didn't go to SSP or an equivalent, mostly because I didn't know it existed. I went to a public high school in New Jersey that, I did my best with the opportunities I had, but I didn't know that things like this even existed. I totally would have applied if I knew it existed, but it just wasn't even on my radar. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of my background, like I said, I went to a medium-sized public high school. My graduating class was like 350. I was the valedictorian, and with that came a level of arrogance, I'll say. When I was going into my senior year, I said, I'm going to apply to Princeton, MIT, and Caltech, and I'm going to get into one of those schools and life will be wonderful. And my parents said to me, we're not paying for your applications unless you apply to more schools. And I was like, well, fine, you can waste your money paying for more applications. And so I put in a couple other applications to 3 or 4 other schools. And I think you might be able to guess, sort of by the way that this story is going, which ones I got into and which ones I didn't. I got into all the schools that I applied to because my parents made me, and I didn't get into any of the schools that I had originally said. And I imagine that, similar to some of you, a lot of my personal worth was in my belief that I deserved to be at one of those schools. And it was really challenging for me. for a good couple weeks to come to terms with the idea that like I still had value, even though I hadn't been accepted to these schools, right? That like I was still going to be able to get a worthwhile educational experience by not going to one of those big three schools that I wanted to apply to. And so, you know, I really had to reckon with that. It took a lot of time to internalize that. But it was as I started to tour, as I went to Union, Drexel, and Villanova, that I started to see that these were absolutely going to be worthwhile experiences, right? That I got to see that all of these schools poured their love and attention into their students. You know, it's not like I didn't pay attention to the other schools that I was applying to. You know, I still tried to find ones that would be relatively good fits. And so, you know, as I was touring, that's when I started to see this thing about the culture, right? This nebulous idea of finding the school whose culture fits you. You know, I loved Drexel. I loved them on paper, but when I went and they started to talk about, you know, the way that their program is structured, I saw that even though I love their academics, I was not going to love the, you know, the experience of being there because it just didn't fit with the things that I valued. And so then, you know, the next thing that I started to ask about was that my brother was on term abroad at that point. And I was, you know, he was having the time of his life. And I started to say, okay, you know, what kind of term abroad offerings do you have? You know, I want to be a physics major. I know that this is the path that I'm interested in. What can you offer me? And Villanova was great and they were honest, but they were like, you know, our program's really intense and we don't typically have physics majors who do term abroad. You know, you may be able to fit a summer course, a summer session in, you may be able to do like a winter mini term or January mini term, but it's just not really going to work out. And then I went to Union sort of a little downtrodden by that. And I asked the same question and I got this really enthusiastic response by the professor who was giving me a personal tour because I had happened to get there early and he was like, oh, you look lost. Like, let me give you a tour of the department about, you know, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. And, you know, this isn't a typical thing that we do, but this is an opportunity that, you know, we've been exploring. And, you know, that cultural fit of like, these are the things I value. And this is how you're, you know, this is how you're interacting with you. You're excited about the same things that I'm excited about. That's how I knew that that was going to be a really wonderful experience for me. And then moving forward, you know, I continued to see how Union was just such a wonderful fit because every summer I had the opportunity to do research, right? I got to know all of my professors in the department on a first name basis. I went out to dinner with a couple of them a couple times. You know, as I was a senior, they were taking me out and we were, you know, they were talking about what it would be like in grad school. And I did go to Yale for grad school, right? So going to a school that maybe most of you don't even know the name of, it didn't preclude me from getting into the grad school that I wanted to get into for the things that I was interested in. Right? It was because I had that opportunity to have those one-on-one interactions and to take full advantage of everything that Union was offering and get all kinds of research experiences, both in the department and out of the department, that I had, you know, the background that I could convince Yale that, you know, this, I am worth your time, right? That you are going, like, this is going to be a good investment for you. And, you know, especially if you are fairly confident that you are going to pursue a research route, it's definitely your graduate school that's more important in terms of like project and pedigree. But if you're, you know, what's important in undergrad is finding a school where you can explore, right? Where you can figure out what it is that you're really interested in and what it is. And if you want to spend that time in grad school, you'll never survive grad school if it's not the thing that your heart is deeply, deeply invested in. Right? Just like I think you can imagine that if someone was in Ssp who didn't really care about astrophysics and research, they'd flounder, right? It would be really, really difficult. And that's sort of the same idea with grad school. And so, you know, by having the opportunities to explore in undergrad, I was able to discover that this was a good fit for me and I was able to continue forward. And so I'm more than happy to talk about, you know, what it's like to go to a smaller liberal arts school. I'm more than happy to talk about, you know, the emotional roller coaster of dealing with my admissions things. I am very, very happy and very proud of going to Union And so, I just want to put that out there that, it's not necessarily, it's definitely not the end of the world if you don't get into one of those big name schools.
All right, thank you, TAs. Thank you all for sharing your experiences. And so we're going to open up for questions now, either for Chris Peterson from MIT and or Peter Osgood from Harvey Mudd College, or for our own Richard Bowden or any of our TAs. So if you could use the raise hand feature, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. All right, I see Ivan was first up, so you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So I have a question to the MIT admission and to the Harvey Mudd, if possible. I'm not sure if you can do that. So I'm wondering, how are the physics and generally how classes are at MIT and Harvey Mudd? Like, by that I mean how a lecture is structured, how is the homework structured, generally what is the approach for that?
So at MIT, it really depends across different subjects and across the whole university. There are some classes that are taught with several hundred people in a large lecture hall and a small recitation that meets once a week. There are classes of 15 or 20 people. There are individual tutorials. There are independent studies. So it's hard to answer your question in terms of a specific style, other than to say that they're generally very problem-solving oriented, which might seem obvious when you're thinking about something like physics, but I think they tend to be more applied and problem-solving oriented in many areas, or at least skewed on that end of the spectrum. And particularly in our humanities, arts, and social sciences, they skew to the more analytical or quantitative sides of those particular disciplines. I can drop some more resources in the chat while Peter answers for Harvey Mudd.
So surprisingly, my answer is going to be quite similar. Because we have a core curriculum, there are 2 physics courses that the entire student body takes. The first course is actually special relativity theory. So that's your introduction to physics, to start thinking as a physicist does. And then a mechanics and waves class. That mechanics and waves class has a large lecture, but again, recitations limited to 19, a lot of problem solving. As you get into the curriculum a bit more, you're going to find some required courses, but not huge numbers of them in the major, and then a lot of elective freedom. So we'll find some students who are much more interested in the more theoretical aspects of physics, some students interested in geophysics or biophysics, some students interested in more applied areas of physics. I would think that the applied side is a bit more prominent than the theoretical side. But we also have a combination major that we just created a few years ago that is a math physics combination specifically for students who have that interest, and that shut off immediately with strong subscriptions. So I think the faculty are all productive in their research. There's some really exciting areas of research that our faculty do. But we do not have a standalone astrophysics program. The students interested in astrophysics, we'll actually team most of them up with students from Pomona College across the street. And you have access to a 1-meter telescope that only undergraduates use. So pretty good stuff.
Okay, June, you're up next, and then we'll hear a question from Akshita.
Okay, this is a general question, but since the SAT and SAT became optional last year, I guess each college made their own new standard for admissions last year. So which elements of applicants did you focus on the most, and what those accepted ones differed most from the others?
I'll go first with this. So we spent a lot of time as a staff a year ago completely overhauling our selection process from one that was quite a bit more focused on students' quantitative information. We were extremely well aware that students' ability to make connections with their secondary school teachers would have been compromised. Their ability to get engaged in extracurricular opportunities were maybe minimized if they existed at all, or they moved to a virtual setting. That some schools, high schools, decided to grade students with a pass no credit system, that some decided to just give everyone the grade they had going into the pandemic, and that was frozen unless they could improve their record. So we decided to move away from the quantitative side to be more of the focusing on our institutional values and culture and trying to find those elements in the student's application, whether that came from recommendations, essays, interviews, what the students engaged with in their descriptions of their activities. And so it was much more about the person, and I would also say the context of the person, that person's experiences, what kind of a school and community they were coming from, what kinds of opportunities they had, what choices they made with, in some cases, relative free time, but constrained free time at that. So it was a much more of an individual look. And then, to be honest with you, we had no way of predicting what our applicant pool would look like in terms of the number and the composition. And I'm similarly uncertain about this coming year.
I would echo much of what Peter said about our staff taking a tremendous amount of time to think through and work through, on trying to understand all of the different disruptions that might have occurred, and to be very intentional about taking those things into account. I'm dropping in the chat a link to our dean's statement about the testing last year and this year for this coming cycle. If you're a senior, the one you would be applying into. And what I would say, our North Star has been that we will only admit students to MIT if we are fully confident that they will succeed academically. And so, not everybody applied with scores last year. Not everybody that we admitted submitted or had taken the SAT or the ACT. But for all students, including those who did submit the SAT and the ACT, we really looked closely at grades, at coursework, at letters of recommendation, at non-SAT, ACT exams, so the AP, the IB, the Abitur abroad, the GCSEs, all these different exams, to try to make sure that students were prepared above all else, because I think we view part of the fundamental custodial aspect of our job to be making sure that we're not setting anybody up to fail academically in MIT's rigorous environment. And we do lots of research every year on what aspects of the academic application are predictive and what aren't. And after that, establishing that baseline of preparation, June answered the other half of your question. We were looking at the same things we always did, right? Initiative, resourcefulness, collaboration, everything else. Now, those might express differently in a pandemic constrained environment, but the fundamental things we look for, which I'll also drop in the chat, were the same, because we're more interested in those underlying traits than their specific expression.
Okay, Akshita, and then Adeline.
So I kind of have two questions. So my main one is, while reading a lot of blogs and just exploring college applications process, a lot of people are saying this idea of well-roundedness. And personally, going through high school, I kind of hadn't thought about college. And so I did a lot of activities and things that align with my interests. So I wanted to know how, as college admissions officers, you guys viewed a well-rounded applicant, quote unquote, someone who is kind of involved in everything versus someone who has a very specific interest and kind of followed that throughout high school.
So I don't really know what a well-rounded applicant is supposed to mean. Like, I feel like it is kind of a catchphrase or a thing that people use, but it's hard to pin it down to me in anything that is analytically useful in the admissions process. What you describe yourself as having done, which is to pursue your interests and aptitudes unselfconsciously with respect to the college admissions process, is, I think, the right thing to do. I wrote a blog post many years ago that I'll link in here called Applying Sideways, because that is about this, because the chance that any marginal activity you do or class that you take or anything else is going to be the difference between getting into MIT or Harvey Mudd or Yale or Union College or not, is really, really, really low. And it's fundamentally outside of your control. But doing the things that you love to do, doing the things that you are excited about doing, and then just applying to college saying, here I am, this is me, is, I think, actually the best thing to do strategically, but also the best thing to do for yourself. And so if you are having anxiety about that, let me free you of it.
I'll just add that if you're going to try and fit into what you perceive to be what the schools want you to be, you can do a good job of turning yourself into a pretzel.
Thank you. And then my second question, or like a follow-up to that, is both of you kind of mentioned that you don't consider majors when applying to college. And again, like personally, I have something like, it's kind of obvious on what major I want to go to, and I think I know what I want to do, like a general idea of that. And so is there any way I can reflect that on my application? And if I do, how will it affect, I guess, the way you view it?
So you can write whatever you like. I mean, we have an essay question that says basically what aspect of MIT attracts you. And that is, for us, because we like have quotas or anything for particular majors, that's really, I would say, more of a prompt to get students to reflect, ideally, on like, why am I applying to MIT? Like, do I actually want to go to this place? Or do I just like the color red? Or, do I like beavers? Or, like, are my parents pressure? Like, there should be some reason that you can say to yourself that you believe, that is saying, what do I want to go here and why do I want to study it? I had this experience when I was applying to PhD programs, because I would get these, or like law school, like I'd get, like I had this idea, especially coming out of undergrad legal studies. I was like, I'm going to go to law school. And then they give you this statement of purpose. It's like, why do you want to go to law school? It's like, man, I cannot lie myself into why I want to go to law school, other than I want to say that I went to law school. Like, it was just so obvious to me that there was not a reason to do it. And I think the more you can approach your college application as an opportunity for that kind of self-discovery, the more of a learning experience it will be for you, as opposed to, just a task that you have to complete to like get on the treadmill of adulthood.
Thank you.
Okay, Adeline, you're next, and then we'll hear from Hayden.
Okay, so I have two questions that kind of go together for both Mr. Osgood and Mr. Peterson. So for a student who wants to like pursue a career or future studies in physics and electrical engineering in college, what level of preparation in high school are you looking for? And is it possible for a student to like pursue both majors in either Harvey Mudd or MIT?
Sorry, only the 88th time I've spoken before I was unmuted. So I will say to the first is that, the second question first, is that double majoring is an awful lot of work. You are welcome to be a major of one and to take courses in the other. We don't operate in silos. It's the faculty speak to each other. They say, Adeline's a really terrific student. She should get into your lab, even though she's majoring in my department. Very easy to do that. As for the first question, I was blanking because I was frustrated by my muting and unmuting myself. Help me out.
So the first question was like, so if I'm gonna pursue my career in like these two majors or one of these two majors, what kind of what level of preparation?
Preparation, we need you to, as an institution, we need you to have had a course in physics, in chemistry, and in calculus. But we are not in a position to dictate what level of course is available to you, what kind of a school system you come from, what conflicts may have arisen with the things that give you joy outside of class. We need you to have had good preparation. We can take you there and help get you on a pathway to success.
The only thing I would add to that, Ellen, because I wasn't sure if you were talking about career prep while at a particular school, is that I think, I mean, in certain professional careers, like, you know, there's been questions about pre-med, for example, particularly in the bio section from earlier today, right? And at both of our schools, there's not a pre-med track, but there's pre-health advising that helps prepare people to apply to medical school. But, you know, a lot of jobs aren't, I mean, there was no special thing that I majored in to become an admissions officer and judge teenagers all day long. Like, there was no class for that. So a lot of jobs are like this, right? Like, there's a certain baseline levels of skills, set of skills, right? Could be reading and writing really fast. It could be making computers do things. It could be, you know, understanding how stars move, or like being able to do physics. But fundamentally, every part of your job is you becoming a, you know, pluripotent stem cell of a student, and then just specializing later on, kind of post the college experience.
Okay, next we'll hear from Hayden, and then we'll jump to Franklin. Hayden?
Okay. I have two questions that are related together. So for the first one, may you please explain whether the recommendations letters are more intended to know about the student's personality or the academics? And second, if I attended a middle school to 7th to 9th grade and a high school for 10th grade and a different high school for 11th grade, would you recommend me to get a letter from a teacher from 11th grade or a teacher I've known since 8th and 9th grade?
So I'll take a crack at this first. In terms of letters of recommendation, I think what letters of recommendation should do is they should describe what it is like to have you in the classroom. And that is, I think, a good letter of recommendation addresses both of the things that you mentioned. Meaning, how is this person in terms of mastering the material, and what non-cognitive skills, study skills, note-taking, you know, information processing, collaboration, working together skills do they have? And that's going to entail some of this like personality stuff. But when I say personality stuff, I don't mean like, oh, they laugh at all my jokes, as much as it means like, yeah, hey, this person, when other people don't understand something, I like to turn to Hayden to help them, you know, because Hayden will help them understand it. Because then you can get a sense as a missions officer, how's this person going to be in our classrooms, whether they're the person doing the tutoring or they're the person who needs the tutoring. In terms of your second question, I mean, it's always specific. And I think that generally the people who know you best at the point where you're applying to college are the people you should be getting letters of recommendations from. Now, in your specific situation, it sounds like there's maybe a little bit of a trade-off between people who knew you really well from a couple of years ago and people who know you more currently, but not for as long a period of time. And I think for you know the relationships better than me. I think we would expect to see some letters from people in 10th or 11th grade, at least some of them. But then having a supplemental letter or two from people who know you really well from a longer period of time ago would be totally in bounds.
I just agree that I'll say the one thing that I find a little frustrating is if the teacher recommendation, what they write, you have no control over. But if they only tell about you as a citizen of the institution of your school and not about you in kind of an intellectual way, that's difficult for me.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question from Franklin and then from Jay.
Yeah, so I guess my first question would be, what sort of undergraduate research opportunities are there at both of these colleges, and also sort of how flexible are the different majors, and also perhaps the core curriculum in general? Oh, and sorry, a third question, if possible, like sort of what are the admissions differences, I guess, with like early versus like regular decision?
Okay, so for my school, the research opportunities will, you'll be invited to join research opportunities right from the start. We have set asides for first-year students. You could engage research, transform that later on into an internship if you'd like. You don't have to engage in research early in your career, but you must as a senior. I'm going to skip to early decision, early action. We do early decision, so that's a binding agreement when you're sort of dating colleges and trying to figure out which college you're going to apply to. Early decision is putting a ring on somebody's finger. That's a whole other level of commitment. So you shouldn't go into it lightly. It should clearly be your first choice school. I think I'm going to let Chris take the rest of it, and just to speed things along.
In your analogy, MIT is poly. You can apply to MIT early. You can apply to wherever else early. You can make, we're not binding in any way, shape, or form, except that we require you to respect the boundaries and commitments that you've made to other institutions. So if you apply to Harvey Mudd College early and MIT early, and you get into Harvey Mudd, you're going to Harvey Mudd, because that was the commitment that you've made to them. In terms of research opportunities, I dropped a link in the chat, but basically at both of our schools, there's ample research opportunities. My understanding from the multiple times that Peter and I have given these sessions together is that things are a little bit more formal and totally universal at Harvey Mudd. Things are a little bit more ad hoc, and you find a professor, find a listing that seems interesting to you at MIT, but at either one of our schools, you're going to be able to get a really great research opportunity. And I do think that as you make your lists of colleges, figuring out what research looks like and what getting research looks like is a thing that should be a column in your spreadsheet.
Okay, I think Jay was next, and then we'll go to Emily.
Hello. I had a question for the Jean Pei as a TA, but also for any of the TAs and the schools in general. I was wondering if you could expand a bit more on the importances of study abroad, as I'm aware that study abroad has a lot of general importance for finding more education and opportunities and just learning more about the world in general. But I was wondering if you could give some more information about what benefits study abroad has specifically in relation to a scientific degree and research opportunities.
Oh, okay. I didn't do any physics when I was in Paris. Let me be clear. I think I studied abroad in the fall of my junior year in France, and it was like purely taking art and art history classes. I mean, for me, it held a lot of value, because it's like I also studied a studio art degree. I wanted to be in tune with like contemporary art currents. There's like a major international art fair happening at the time that I was there. So like I went to a bunch of like gallery events and so on, and like went to like the Palais de Tokyo and went to like and saw like Camille Unro or whatever. And a similar thing happened in Amsterdam, which I went to like the summer after my freshman year, just for like a short abroad program through like Stanford Bing, where it was like some sort of like transdisciplinary like art seminar led by this Stanford music professor, Mark Applebaum, and we like went to art events and like went to like the Concertgebouw, for example, and like saw the Belgian National Orchestra. And I went to a contemporary art museum called the Stedelijk in the Netherlands, which like totally changed my practice like as an artist, So, you know, I think that kind of stuff is important depending on what you value, you know. I mean, the value of study abroad is that like after college, like there's going to be no other time in your life where you can just like up and like leave your country for like a few months and just live somewhere else for a while. Even better if it's on your university's like bill, you know, or like it's being like expensed by the school you go to. I don't know, like travel is good. For me, I like really value all the time I've spent abroad. And like, you know, because I went to Amsterdam, I like went on this like long backpacking trip through like Germanic speaking Europe before. And like when I was in France, I like went to like Italy and Denmark, and then I went to Japan to see my friend who was studying abroad in Kyoto, et cetera, you know, like it enabled a lot of like other travel for me. I guess like I did write a scientific manuscript while I was in Paris, or like I was working on a paper submission when I was in Paris, like on some like climate change paper I was working on. So it was nice to take a break. I think like Stanford really like challenged me in many ways, and I struggled a lot, especially in physics. I was like at a point my sophomore year where I was like struggling like greatly in the physics major, and so it was good to take a break, you know, like just for my mental health and like my physical health, and also like travel. I think that's part of like one, if you choose for it to be so, like it can be a valuable part of one's life. Yeah. It changed. I guess it changed me in ways that I can't really like articulate because they're like so integrated into my like overall like experience. But yeah, I wish I could answer this in a better way, but like I can't say that like travel abroad or studying abroad like provide like specific material benefits to you always. Like you'd be surprised at what happens like there. I mean, I had other friends, for example, who studied abroad at Oxford, which is another program that Stanford offered. And they did like pretty intense, like intensely academic things where they had like a tutorial like recitation with Oxford professors, and they did like math research at Oxford, or like physics research, theoretical physics research at Oxford. And that was another option for the more academically minded of us. I just wanted to hang out, you know, or I wanted to go to France. I speak French, you know. I wanted to like go to lots of art museums. I did that like a lot. I went to like an insane number of like galleries and like shows and so on. Yeah, I like wanted to travel in France. I went to like Lille and Strasbourg, and like Fontainebleau, etc. So yeah.
I see that Peter and Chris have both answered a bit in the chat. Do either of you want to add anything out loud to answer that question about study abroad? Or any of the TAs?
Yeah, I would be happy to just sort of echo what Jean-Pé was saying. In general, my experience is you don't go on term abroad because it furthers your academic your like major academic pathway. If you can do that while you're abroad, that's awesome. You know, in my case, I did a term abroad where we did biophysics research. I learned very quickly. I had no interest in biophysics research while I was doing that. But it was an opportunity for me to explore Sicily and grow a part of, you know, my education and my cultural and world knowledge that I would not have had the opportunity to do otherwise. You know, in terms of, you know, I was able to make that into an opportunity for me research-wise, because I was already in Italy. I was able to reach out to a professor who does cosmology research in Bologna, which is up in mainland Italy. And so after I finished my time in Sicily, I actually spent my summer working with him doing research on cosmology. And then, you know, he and I had an understanding that, you know, I would be taking 3-day weekends pretty regularly in order to explore, you know, the rest of Italy and you know, the larger extent of Europe as well. So, you know, I think that the value of term abroad goes far beyond like what it does for your for furthering your major coursework process. You know, it's about growing as a citizen of the world. It's about exploring and experiencing different cultures. And, you know, as Jean-Pé said, there's not very many times past this where you're going to be able to just take 2, 3, 4 months and just run around Europe or run around, you know, a part of Asia, and you know, go do all that exploring. You know, so it's sort of a unique time to be able to take that opportunity. And it really is still one of my fondest memories, or some of my fondest memories come from those experiences.
If I can just amplify, and I'm trying to draw a parallel to what you're experiencing through SSP. You're away from your known support group. You're in an immersion program. You are being challenged in ways you haven't been challenged before. You develop a greater self-awareness, a critical way. Sometimes the loneliness of it is good for you. And there are times that really can inspire, maybe even transform the direction of your path. And that can be a very, very powerful tool that you could take advantage of.
Okay, thank you. I think in the interest of time, I see that there are a lot of hands raised. In order to get through as many as we can, we'll move on to the next question. We'll hear from Emily next, and then Aaron. And if you have a short, quick question, do put that in the chat. We have people following along there. If you have something that could be handled in the chat, we could perhaps get through more that way. So Emily, and then Aaron's up next.
All right, I had a few quick questions that I'll just put in the chat later, but for more long-winded ones. So the first thing is, as someone who's more interested in like STEM entrepreneurship, I know MIT in particular is huge on that. So how do both of your colleges kind of foster that like entrepreneurial STEM aspect, if that makes sense, in your coursework?
So the quick answer that I'll give, and I'll drop a couple links in the chat, is that the MIT business faculty have said to us on several times that what they prefer to do is they like students who aren't interested necessarily in business qua business, but business that where they can like take a really hard technological problem that's going to improve the world somehow and then bring it to market, right? Their viewpoint is that they want to kind of educate engineers and scientists on how to do business more than they are like interested in educating business people, right? Per se. And I think the other big thing that's part of it is MIT gives a lot of funding and resources to our entrepreneurship programs, but doesn't, you know, take a stake in student companies. You know, MIT's advisors at the Trust Center for Entrepreneurship are forbidden from kind of doing anything exploitative or in any way taking advantage of their mentorship role. There's some pretty strict ethical lines that we follow that I think help protect our students.
From my standpoint, I don't know if it's something that is so much curricular. There are courses that you could elect to take, but nothing that you would necessarily see as a part of the institution broadly, that everyone would be a part of. But I think it's going to be more in the associations you have with faculty mentors, with fellow students. There's a large maker group. There's a large entrepreneurship community at especially at our neighboring colleges, but there's also clubs specifically for it called HMC Inc. INQ at MUD that could support you for that.
And then I guess the next thing I was wondering about more on the admission side, this is sort of abstract, but in terms of what you're looking for, can you talk a little bit about the balance between what a student can contribute to the school versus what the school can contribute to the student? So like, are you fitting a student to the school or the school to the student, if that makes sense?
I think we're fitting a community. Like, I think we really, and I would suspect this is true of Harvey Mudd, but MIT, which is much larger than Harvey Mudd, is still small enough where we're thinking about the 1,000 person class that we're admitting as like, is this the best combination permutation of admissible applicants who can go through MIT together, who are going to help each other, who are going to bring everything that they need. And I think that's a really critical thing to think about as you're applying to college. An important realization is that it's not a it's not a referendum on you as a human, right? It's a referendum on you as your place in this puzzle that we're trying to assemble on our side of the table.
Okay, next we have we'll let Erin go, and then after Erin, Neil.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I just have a question for Mr. Peterson and Mr. Osgood. So this month, and this applies to me and many of my friends, our first AP test scores will be coming out. And I'm wondering how much weight is placed on AP scores, or a lack of reported AP scores possibly, for people whose transcripts show that they have taken AP classes, and if those people have also reported SAT scores and ACT scores. I've just heard a lot of differing takes from different people about how important they actually are, and if colleges are suspicious if they're not reported, or what kind of weight is placed on them. So it would be very valuable to have that clarified by you directly. Thank you so much.
Not everyone has access to them. If you do have access to them, did you take those tests and you didn't take the course? You did take the course. There's all kinds of different combinations of this. I think it's difficult to argue that if a student has a high test score on an AP or an International Baccalaureate exam, something was learned there, whether that is the student, whether that's the curriculum. If the student doesn't do as well on that score, A, do they share it with us? Question, I don't know if they would. I know there are some who don't. And second of all, is this something about the instruction, or is it something about the student? It's hard to read into that. So I try not to fix too much importance to it. I kind of say, well, that's nice. Something was learned well here. If the score is high, excellent. I'm glad to know that.
I mentioned earlier that academic preparation is the North Star of our process. And I think that is where I would fit, as Peter was saying, kind of the answer to your question, right? Like, there are many reasons why students either take the class, take the test, don't take the test, don't take the test, but don't tell us. What I would advise you, and just to give you a peek behind the curtain, I think we're trying to come up with some language that we're going to put on our application for this fall to give students more guidance, because we know this is an area of stress. My advice to you is to tell us whatever happened in the simplest way possible, because the real answer is likely not worse than the places our paranoid, risk-averse brains could go. And so if the answer is, when somebody doesn't report a test score, but we see that they took the class, it's hard for us to know. Did they take the test and bomb it? Did they not take the test because they couldn't afford it and the school wasn't providing information? Did they not take the test because the teacher was a substitute during COVID and said, I'm really not preparing you guys well, don't even bother taking this? Whatever happens, you should tell us, because our interest is in making sure that you are sufficiently prepared to attend our school. And so it is actually in your interest to help us make that assessment, whatever the answer might be.
Okay, next question from Neil, and then from Aaron Z.
Hi, so I know that like MIT and Harvey-Mudd both have like joint majors in like math and computer science. I know like MIT is like the course 18C, and then Harvey-Mudd is like the joint major. So what's the experience like in one of these like combination majors? Does it like skew one way or the other, or is it like roughly split?
Split for Mudd.
Yeah, I dropped the degree charts link, and I think the most helpful way to answer this question would be to look at the actual courses that are taught and decide what kind of skew you think that is.
Okay, Aaron Z.
Hi, so I've heard about the clinics program at Harvey-Mudd, and I was wondering if Mr. Osgood could kind of go into more detail about that program. And I was wondering if MIT has any sort of similar program.
You're going to find other colleges that have things like co-op programs or other kinds of initiatives that get sort of to this. This is a course that you take while your other courses are going on. You are not hired by the company. You're a student and a team of typically 5 or 6 students who are solving this problem in a year. So here's an example. Our students basically rode roller coasters and found a way to capture the energy in slowing a roller coaster down they could repurpose to create kind of a green energy roller coaster ride. And that was for Paramount Studios in Hollywood. That's one of many examples. They cover a wide variety of areas: social justice, aeronautics, biomedical, all kind, stuff that's much more digitally oriented. It kind of depends on what major you choose and where your interests fall.
So MIT doesn't have an exact version of this kind of thing, as I understand it. Although we do have a number of classes, particularly in our engineering school, across the various departments that do this kind of co-design. I'm thinking the flagship course in mechanical engineering is a course called 2009, which is our product engineering processes, where everybody has to end the term with a product. And in the course of iterating through your design process, you talk to stakeholders, you talk to people suffering from Parkinson's who need some kind of device that might help make their tremors reduced. You might talk to a company that has a supply chain issue and you're trying to figure out something that you could do to improve their supply chain. I don't understand it. From what I understand of Harvey Mudd's program, it isn't the same exact thing, but there are certainly courses at MIT, classes at MIT that involve here is an actual problem that exists out in the world. Can you do something about it?
Thank you.
Okay, next let's go to Joey T, and then we'll hear a question from Matt N.
All right, so I have two questions. My first is regarding sort of interdisciplinary mixing of different subjects. So I have interests both within STEM, I'm interested in computer science and biology, and also in the humanities, so creative writing. I was just interested in how MIT and Harvey Mudd are able to incorporate interest both within STEM itself and with other areas like the humanities.
So I think for both of us, we benefit from having ample course offerings outside of the core math and science at MIT through our School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences, as well as our cross-registration at Wellesley and Harvard. And if I may speak for Harvey Mudd, at the rest of the Claremont McKenna Consortium schools, as Peter was describing his presentation. And we both have different programs where, we both have our sort of core science classes and then our humanities concentration requirement. As I will often point out, you're required to take more units of humanities, arts, and social sciences than you are required to take units of math and science at MIT, which is something that most people don't expect. Now, how exactly you configure these things, whether you do a concentration, a joint major, whether you just take a couple of electives in a thing that you are interested in, whether you just make use of these ample resources, lectures, talks, and other things outside of your formal academic environment, really depends on the students and what they want to do. But I think, and I know from our earlier conversation where we talked about this at length with the bio kids, both of our institutions place a significant historical value on the intersection of science communication, and building a world that we can live in that isn't going to boil us alive within the lifetimes of everybody on this Zoom call. So those are things that I think we're excited for all of our students to take advantage of.
Yeah, and then for my second question, this is kind of more general and might be kind of difficult to answer, but if you had to pick one concrete thing, what is your favorite thing about your college?
I love the way that people care for each other at my institution. I've seen so many cases of people reaching out to help each other whether they're up or down, and sharing that. It's just a tremendous, close-knit, people actively wanting you to succeed and be happy, knowing that it is very hard, and some of it's challenging socially, some of it's challenging intellectually, and you're going to push through that, but we're going to be there to catch you in case you are starting to slip.
I would echo that, and I think this is probably in part because the reason that people stay in admissions is because they care about their institutions and the students. It's not for the work-life balance. It's not for the pay. It's because of the kids and the work that we're doing. The only variation that I would say is I think this is probably true of Harvey Mudd as well, because it has some similar cultural characteristics. I love watching smart, hardworking students who principally in high school identified as math and science people develop their identities beyond that narrow archetype. Because when you come to a place like MIT or a place like Harvey Mudd, like everybody is the math and science person. So it is no longer sufficiently distinguishing to just be known as the person who's into astrophysics, right? It's hundreds of people. And so watching, students who you meet on the road at SSP or in San Jose or at any place else, and then, sorry, it just entered in my head, the two genders, SSP and San Jose. The benefit is that you see people who have to develop these other skills, these other interests, these activities. They dye their hair, right? Like they study abroad. They do all of these things to grow. And watching that growth and that radical self-transformation that being at a disciplined institution forces upon you is really, really, really fulfilling.
Thank you so much.
All right, next Matt N, and then how about Jennifer S after him?
All right, awesome. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Osgood, for speaking with us today. So as for my question, I really like that MIT and Harvey Mudd accept students into their colleges undeclared. And I was wondering what the process is like to declare a major and what the counseling is like to help students find their major or primary area of interest.
I think that's going to happen differently for different students, but we have a really sophisticated network of advising. Some of it student to student, more of it faculty to student. At any one time, a Mudd student has 2 academic advisors, plus there are resources in Student Affairs Office to help you with that. But you're part of the reason for our core, or one of the benefits, I'll say rather than the reason, of our core curriculum is it gives you experiences in each department prior to you having to make that decision. So you'll be making a far more informed choice.
And similarly, we've adopted a number of things, including a number of what we call discovery classes. That are just sort of small units, an hour or 2 a week in the fall or spring of your first year, that are designed to kind of give you a taste of a particular major or discipline, and help you get a sense of whether or not it's something you would like to declare.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, next Jennifer, and then Farrell.
My question is, I'm kind of interested in both physics and math, but since I'm more interested in majoring physics, I spend more time there. Since admissions are more based on the College of Science and not really specific STEM majors, would you say that a student's math background is more important than physics, even if their interest is in physics? And I guess a kind of similar question is, are math and physics applicants evaluated in separate pools or the same pool?
So for us, it's all evaluated in the same way. And I believe this is true for Harvey Mudd as well. To answer your question about preparation, I would say that both, we only, to repeat myself from earlier, the academic preparation is our North Star. And so making sure that you are, you have a solid foundation in both physics and math and chemistry and biology, frankly, is really important for your academic, for your admissions prospects for us, because those are courses in the core curriculum that you cannot avoid. Now, sufficiently prepared does not mean that you have to have done linear algebra in high school, and does not mean that you have to have done every flavor of AP physics there is with all the letters after it in high school. It just means that we have to be confident that you can transition into the MIT first year curriculum and succeed.
%. Echo.
All right, Farrell, and then Sarah W.
Okay, thank you so much. My first question is for the Harvey Med admissions, Mr. Osgood. I'm an international student, and as an international student, do I have a chance that I will get a full ride scholarship at Harvey Med University?
Yeah, I wish that the situation were different. Our budget for international students is very small. So and we will only admit students who either can provide their own funding, their families can, or the few that we can sustain with our budget. And that few is probably around 5 people, 5 admitted students per year out of a pool of maybe 350, 400, this last year, 450. So I wish I had better news for you. But if you are one of those students, you're going to be fully funded, or as much as you would need. We won't overfund you. But.
Okay, my second question is for Mr. Peterson. What is it like to be an international student at MIT? And also, for many international students, we don't have AP tests are not offered. And how does this affect us?
So second question first, your application as an international student will be read by someone with a lot of training and experience in evaluating the academic tests, the national exams, the national curricula for your particular country, and assessing your preparation and achievement in that context. In terms of what it's like to be an international student at MIT, I guess I didn't say this in this talk, I said it in the this morning. You know, about 75% of MIT undergrads, the last time I looked, are either immigrants or the child of at least one immigrant. And so most MIT students are very close to the new American or immigrant experience. And I think that provides a certain sense of solidarity and familiarity, because many people have similar stories, similar experiences, similar jokes, similar meme groups about that aspect of their lives. Additionally, you know, we have a well-staffed international students office that supports students with the pragmatics of visa applications, you know, and all the associated paperwork and everything else.
Okay, my last question is, can you describe the sports and athletics at MIT?
Sure, we have the largest Division III athletics program in the United States. Our crew team is D1, and our pistol and riflery teams regularly compete with the National Military Academies, which is kind of sad when you think about it. About a third of MIT students, quarter of MIT students are varsity athletes. You know, they actually have a higher GPA on average than the non-students athletes. And my theory for this is because being a student athlete means that you've got a team of people who are all going through the same experience, who are disciplined, who are good at time management. So it obviously depends on the sport when you practice, how things are run. You know, you're not going to be on ESPN probably if you come to MIT for sports, but you will have the opportunity to have camaraderie, kind of a classic, you know, college athletics experience where you're a student and also someone who enjoys doing sports.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, in the interest of time, we are approaching the top of the hour, and our admissions officers have been here for now a total of nearly 4 hours. So we will end before the top of the hour. We may only get to 2 more questions. Know that you have your TAs as a resource for the next couple weeks, and then beyond that, you have the entire SSP alumni community to ask these questions of. In addition, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Osgood have put their email addresses in the chat. So we'll hear 2 more questions from Sarah W. and from Ish.
Okay, this question is to the admissions officers, and thank you to the TAs who answered my question in the chat. But like, I've always had 2 different interests in art and science, and I've only gotten into science like relatively recently, but a source of anxiety and frustration for me has always been like hearing that you need a spike or like one thing that you excel in. And I was just like wondering like a fear of mine is appearing indecisive with what I do, or in that, I don't know, it's kind of a rant more than a question, I suppose.
Oh, Sarah, I feel like I should talk about this, because I double majored, right? Like, okay, I wrote my Common App essay when I was applying to college saying about my dual interests in physics and art, to quote my own Common App. Every school I applied to, I said I would do physics and studio art. When I was a freshman in my winter quarter, I declared a physics and studio art dual major. 4 years later, I graduated with like a BS and BA in physics and studio art. And that in its own way was like extremely decisive, right? Like I said, I had planned to do this from the very start. I did it. And like, that's more intellectual focus than most people display over the course of their undergrad years. Like I had a friend who declared his like majors like senior year. After being hounded by like Stanford admin to do so. Like do not worry about it. I mean, like intellectual focus can appear in like many different formats, like I think most people like dabble a lot in a lot of different things. I know people who change their majors many times. I would consider, as I said, I would consider myself more monastic or more like single-minded than most, and I still did 2 degrees. So I guess like, what are your concerns in this regard?
If I can interject, I think a lot of colleges will find you appealing because of the diversity of your interests. And you don't need to hold back at all. This is maybe a burgeoning interest. You've just been exposed to it, or you've been mulling it over. Share that that comfort and with indecision that you have, and that may be actually a strength, a sense of real sincere inquiry.
I agree.
Okay, let's go to Ish now for our last out loud question. If you have a question that we did not get to, please do put it in the chat and we'll see if we can get a few more taken care of. So Ish?
Yeah, hi. Actually, I was just curious about the admissions process. So what strategy do the admissions offices have to catch applicants that exaggerate their achievements or maybe submit inauthentic or consultant written essays or something like that? So how do you get those applicants?
If we told you, then they wouldn't work anymore, would they?
Oh, that's kind of
more
true, but...
more seriously, I think it's generally it's generally just I mean, we treat all of our students with the presumption of good faith and integrity. And then I think, if there's any discontinuities or contradictions that arise in the course of the teacher recommendations, the interview, or anything else, we will look them down. But I think in my experience, real fraud of that kind is pretty rare. Generally, I think most people applying to college are good, honest, earnest people just trying to work through the system.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're at the end of our time. Would you all show your appreciation? I'll give a round of applause to our guests, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Osgood. We do have, I'm sorry that we have not enough time for everyone's questions, but you do have resources with SSP, with your TAs, and also reaching out to these universities. So we'd like to thank both of our guests for coming, interrupting their vacations, or incorporating you into their vacation. So we do definitely appreciate their time today. And that concludes our program.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
As I said in the chat, feel free to ask me any more questions via Discord group DM. Please include another topic or something. Yeah. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you both for this marathon session. 2 hours back to back, I know is a lot, especially on what's supposed to be a day off.
Yeah. It's so much fun to be paired with Chris. I will just say, I just love the way you broaden the conversation. It helps students feel a sense of agency, of comfort and control. I think your messages are so great. So thank you.
Likewise, Peter. It's a lot of fun. I feel like we're almost getting to the point between this and